Hi, thank you so much for letting me interview you regarding your experience as a woman in STEM and your career. I really appreciate it.
I'm happy to be here, Arthi, to make you successful.
So I just want to start off with a small introduction about yourself. So could you please tell me a little bit about yourself, please?
Yeah. So my name is Amy Byalick. I am a individual who tries to find joy in life. From a personal perspective, I'm a mom, a single mom of two wonderful children, a 25-year-old son and a 12-year-old daughter. So they bring me much joy and obviously want to ensure that they are successful as they continue to grow up and whatnot. From a professional level, I am a vice president of finance, specifically supporting information technology organizations. So my role is partnering with chief information officers and taking their financials and turning them into a story so that they can manage their organizations effectively. I want to make sure I provide them a story that helps make them a better decision maker so they make the right decisions for whatever company they work for. I have been a finance practitioner my entire career. My underlying education was an accountant by trade, but after much work in the accounting world, I transitioned into finance. Arthi, I'll share this real quick. There's a difference between accounting and finance. I like to tell people the difference is accounting or accountants tend to manage what's happening today and in the past and being able to share that. A finance practitioner is someone who is more from a planning perspective. Where are we going to be 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 2 years from now, etc., so that you can plan if you have to spend more money, spend less money, change how you spend money. And so I like to help be more forward thinking. And
Okay.
that's what my provides.
That's really cool. So I'm just curious how you got interested in this. Like what sparked your interest in going into like business, accounting, and then all of a sudden switching to finance in the middle.
Yeah, so growing up, Arthi, honestly, here's a little data point you probably don't know about me. I actually, when I was younger, I wanted to be in law enforcement. I thought being a public servant and safety was something I really enjoyed watching on television and learning about in school and all those good things. Well, fast forward to it's graduation time from high school and I need to figure out what to do. I started down the path of criminal justice, and the piece that I was where I was introduced to accounting was in my first semester of college. They said, "Hey, you got to take an elective class," and so I took accounting, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with accounting because numbers never lie. That's one of my little mantras in life. You can pick up a financial statement and numbers will tell a story. And I was very intrigued by that. And so inherently, I went into the accounting world and became an accountant. But the transition to finance, where later in my career, I was about 10 years out of college and I had been an accountant for a while, I got exposed to being this planner, which is what finance is. Hey, where are we going to be 2 years from now? What do we think the future is going to look like? And being that I support CIOs, technology is always changing. Tomorrow, something could get, in fact, Chat GPT came out a few weeks ago. And
Yeah.
CIOs have had to pivot and talk about that. And so I love the whole notion of innovation. And I feel planning, you have to be thoughtful of where is the world going to be in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 3 years. And so I just gravitated to finance to help be more of what's the art of the possible in the future, right? What's going to happen a few years from now? And how are we going to fund it? How are we going to get money to do that? And that's where I got to marry up this essence of accounting because I needed that background to understand numbers and how all the puts and takes work on a financial statement, but I also love the fact of digging in and figuring out trends and things of that sort. And I relate that back to my days when I wanted to be in criminal justice. I loved digging into documentaries. I loved studying cases and getting into the minds of people. And that's what I loved back then. So I feel like finance has kind of brought it all together. How weird that sounds, but it really is. I really have found my sweet spot in life.
That's nice. That's amazing. So I'm just curious of the path that you took from high school onto the current position that you're in right now. So like where did you do your high school and like where did you do like your bachelor's and like your master's and then like if you did any like further education after that?
Yeah. So a little nugget about me, I wouldn't say I followed the standard path of I finished high school and graduated, and I then went on to a 4-year university. I took a little bit of a different path. When I turned 18, I became a mom. And so at that point, I had to grow up very fast right after high school and care for my son, who is Joseph. Well, the reason why I mentioned that is a few years after having birthing Joseph, I realized, wow, I need to go figure out what I want to do when I grow up. I was working, but I was barely making ends meet. And as a mom, obviously, I wanted the best for my son. So I took the opportunity to go to a community college and inquire what it would take to get an associate's degree. And that's where I got exposed to accounting, right? That's that first semester where I signed up to be in criminal justice and I had to take this elective and I chose accounting and I found my love for it. Nonetheless, my community college, my first 2 years associate's degree, I did in Massachusetts at a community college called Brockton Community College. Or excuse me, Massasoit Community College. It was in Brockton, Massachusetts. And then after that, I went to the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, and I got my Bachelor's of Science with a major in accounting. I took about 10 years off, and that 10 years I focused in on my career and really elevating myself up a career ladder where I thought I wanted to go. And about 10 years into my career, I recognized a need to go further in my education. And I applied to the SMU, which is Southern Methodist University, in their Executive Master's Business and Administration program, or what they coined the EMBA program. And that program was phenomenal. And I effectively received my master's degree in 2019.
Okay.
As far as onward education, Arthi, if I could just mention that real quick, I would say if you were to ask me, hey, Amy, are you going to go back to college and get a PhD or another master's? And my answer is going to be no. However, I will tell you this, I have a love for learning. I think that's one thing I would always encourage any human being is to continue to learn. And it could be something silly from, like right now, my daughter and I are learning Spanish, to a couple weeks ago, I had to learn a fertilizer schedule for my yard in my house. And so I think it's important as human beings always being inquisitive and thriving to learn more. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily need to be in terms of a school or education, but rather than being inquisitive.
Mm-hmm. I know there's a lot of like stigmas about like community college since you like mentioned community college. So is there like a way to like break the stigma for like, like people who are like who don't really want to go into like bachelor's but like want to start in like community college and then like go up from there?
So Arthi, I love that you asked that question.
I mean, a lot
Because
of people ask it, but I'm just curious myself
yeah,
and for like
and
other people too.
yeah, in my Amy Byalick, the 44-year-old, is going to tell you what I think now in my age versus when maybe I was 18 before I became a mom and what my dreams were. My dreams were to go to college and live in a dorm and be part of a sorority and have that whole experience. And while I did not get that because I went to a community college, I missed out on that. But here's the so what the 44-year-old Amy would tell you. I would hands down do a community college again in a heartbeat for two reasons. One, My associate's degree cost me $2,500, $2,500. Now, when I was earning it, Arthi, I was broke. And $2,500 at the time was a lot of money. Now, as I've gotten older, I could afford $2,500. The point is at the time I could have paid a lot of money going to a university for my 2 years, and I would have gotten the same exact experience or education level as I would have at my community college. The part that I would be missing out, which is where I started, is I wouldn't have gotten the experience of that camaraderie of being at a university or a college, right? Living locally, etc. I will leave you with this. On my resume, where people ask where I go to school and got my bachelor's, I always say the University of Massachusetts Dartmouth. I never really talk about Massasoit Community College. And that's probably doing a disservice to Massasoit because I got a pretty decent education for $2,500 in 2 years. My point, though, is even in my career, nobody has ever said, because you went to Massasoit, that doesn't mean that you can't have this role. Because you went to community college, it doesn't mean that you can't grow on the ladder. Everybody still says you still invested 2 years of your life to get educated. So wherever you did that, high five, we applaud you. And so my point is if I were to do it all again, yes, I hands down would pick a community college purely from the savings, and the quality was pretty much the same that I received in my education.
Yeah. Thank you. So I know that IT stands for informational technology, but that's just very broad. So is it possible that you could deep dive into what exactly is IT?
Yes, information technology, aka IT. IT is an interesting definition. I feel like, and I'm pausing for a second, Arthi, because I feel like IT is delineated into two parts.
Yeah.
There's the part of where I talk about run. And when I think about run in the IT world, it is the most important thing or activity that happens within the IT organization. And that run means making sure every day, whatever company you work for, whatever the case may be, that there is an ability for employees to connect together. So, for example, in the company I work at, our organization that manages the run, they make sure every day when I walk into the office, there's internet at the office. They make sure that my laptop is working. And if I have any issues with it, somebody can come and quickly connect with me and fix it. They make sure that every file I open in Excel and save, and my Excel files are massive, there's a place to save it out in our network so that I can quickly access it and continue to do my job. So IT, I bucket it into that first category of run. Those people are super critical because without them, I couldn't do my job every day. The other part of IT is to be innovators or transform. The thought process behind IT, Arthi, is that they're supposed to be thinking, they're supposed to help create efficiencies so that you or employees of a company can do their jobs faster, easier. And that's true. I hands down believe IT, the other arm of them, is to be thoughtful of looking into the future. What cool new things are out there in the market that could really help make a company's life easier? Mm-hmm. And it's a hard balance, Arthi, when we talk about what exactly is IT. Because at the end of the day, the CIO has to get up and say, man, I got to make sure everybody can do their job today. But then they also have to get up and say, man, where are we going to be a year from now? Right? What's the new innovation that's coming out? And they have to put both hats on. And it's tough for CIOs, right? Because where do you spend all your time and energy? And it really depends on the situation or the company you're at the given time.
And you said about like the planning, like all of that, is that like when the financing comes in to like do the planning?
Exactly. So Arthi, coming back to my example of an IT department and the CIO having to manage the run and then this part of transform or innovative, is the fact that from a finance perspective, we spend a lot of money on run. And sometimes we have to push more money to run because a business is saying, hey, I need more laptops, right? I I hired more people, so I need more laptops for people to do their day-to-day job. At times, the financing part of me is like, well, that's going to take away from our money that we can go do cool, innovative things. Go look at new things that are coming out in the market that could make everybody's job easier. And so as CIOs and being a finance partner to them is I try to help find that healthy balance. That healthy balance to say all this run activity is super important and we need people, we need tools, we need hardware, and all these dollars going out the door to support that. But I got to make sure you got some money on the other side to go look at the cool new things we can do for our organization to make them more effective. And Arthi, here's the great thing, right? Is that at times it's a balancing act. It goes back to my comment, the CIO's got to wake up and make sure every day the run and the lights are on for everybody to do their job. And then they got to wake up the same day on the same side of the bed and think about what's going to happen 2 to 3 years from now. It's the same thing from a finance plan. I'm like, do we have enough money to take care of what we got to get done today? And have we saved enough money to go figure out the cool stuff that's coming? And so that's where it's really a partnership between the CIO and my role is to make sure they have the ability to fund it and to do it.
Okay. Could you please describe like a day in your job as the VP? So like more about like what you do on like a day basis.
Yeah, so every day is unique, but the core function of my role is supporting our budgeting, our annual plan. So every year we sit down as a team of leaders and we do our annual plan. How much money are we going to need for the next 12 to 18 months? Mm-hmm. And that's important because in a company our size, we need to make sure that we articulate, hey, we're going to go ahead and ask for an X dollars in the coming year. This is what you're going to get at. So one of the core responsibilities is hands down doing the annual plan. We also do a forecast. So after Arthi, we say how much money we need next year. Next year comes, and then we do check-ins to say, hey, do we think we need a little bit more, a little bit less? And this is where things are really fun with my role. That's called a forecast. Sometimes things happen in our world, like pandemic, COVID. Yeah. Back in 2020, we really didn't see that coming. And so a lot of companies leverage their forecast to say, hey, oh my gosh, we got to go be able to make sure everybody can connect at home and can talk to us on Teams or Zoom or WebEx or whatever the case may be. So a forecast allows you to look at the surroundings that's going on in the economy. Maybe there's a recession coming, pandemic. Maybe there's a war that happens in our world. All those things are attributors that when you do a plan, you may not know about at the time. So the forecast is the second thing that I do. And then the last thing, which I would say are core responsibilities, is making sure our CFO, our CIO, sometimes, they get finance, they get numbers, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, Arthi, they can't keep their pulse on it. And that's really my team's role is to make sure we're keeping our pulse on their spend so that if we need to pull back and say, hey, we've got, something coming up in the next few months, we got to kind of curtail spending, we put a governance in place so that we can ensure that there's controls in place on how we're spending our money so that we don't become frivolous.
What makes your role as the VP different and like higher than like the others? And how did you get up to that high of a position? Yeah. Not to be silly, but I'll say it. Every day I'm hustling. There's a song out there with that lyric, and I'm not kidding, Arthi. Every day I get up and I realize how am I going to get into the office and make an impact. And I believe my level of hustling, or some may call it tenaciousness, is what's helped move up in my career. I mean, when I was 26, fresh out of college, I was an accounts payable clerk. I processed invoices for a company who made sure that the vendors they used got payments. And then I became a payroll representative. And I learned how to pay people. And that was really cool because I got to learn how to pay people in different countries, right? And I was like, oh, in Canada,
their government pays for their health care, that they don't have to pay health insurance. So I got a lot of exposure when I became a payroll clerk. My point is every role I took, Arthi, I leveraged what I did in the previous role. And I learned, and then that plus the hustling, like what more? What can I do more? It really led me to where I'm at now. Now, having said that, I've had some great mentors and coaches in my life. And I think that's another piece that any young lady, any young adult, is find those people that you want to surround yourself with to say, hey, I need to be vulnerable, right? What would you recommend I do in my career? Or I experienced this issue. What kind of insights do you have that I could get around it? That's the great thing about knowing older people, Arthi, is why recreate the wheel when you can ask questions and learn from others. So having said that, it's really attributed that I've had a great network of people who I could lean on and talk to make, to teach me and mentor me and coach me. But then this tenaciousness within me, this fire in me that always wanted to strive more and grow. At the end of the day, Arthi, I will tell you, this has nothing to do with finance. It has nothing to do with my education. I just love seeing people succeed. So I love being a leader. I love seeing people grow and I love seeing people succeed. And so as part of my role in moving up from, an accounts payable clerk to where I am now, vice president of finance, I think that's the gravy on top. Like I get to see other people grow beneath me, and one day they'll maybe even be in my role. And I really enjoy that.
I feel like that fire to like succeed is really important. I really do see that in you and like what you just said. And I think that's really cool because like some people like they're like, oh, I want to do this goal. I think I can make it up to this goal, but like they don't have the fire to do it. And it kind of sucks and they end up like failing.
Yeah, Arthi, there's this one individual influencer I follow on social media, and he has a tagline that he tells the people that follow him, and it's called "Compete Every Day." And as human beings, I believe, it's my belief, that we tend to love competition, right? You grow up in sports, you want to win, you want to be the first one to finish the test and run up to the front to hand it in to the teacher. I think we're all that way, aren't we? But here's the so what. Coming back to my compete every day, your biggest competition is yourself. Every day when you wake up, right? How am I going to be better than yesterday? What am I going to learn today? What am I going to do better? How's that going to help me personally, my family, my career? And part of that is hustling, right? It's getting up and saying, I'm going to compete with myself from yesterday, and I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna kill it. I'm gonna do better. And I think that's super important to recognize, even as young adults. Your biggest competition is you. And as long as you continue to beat your day, beat the individual you were the day before, that's called winning in my book.
I I just want to go back to the subject about Johnson Controls, and I didn't really ask this, which I should have asked earlier. I'm just curious what Johnson Controls is and what they do.
I'll mention this, Arthi. I've recently joined Johnson Controls within the last 2 months. It's been a transition for me, and I am loving it. But the so what is they offer, Johnson Controls has been a company that's been around for a very long time. I believe it's 140 years to be exact.
Oh,
And I know, isn't that impressive?
yeah.
And the so what is at the end of the day, they offer a portfolio of technology and services and software to help buildings and infrastructure. So they can between what you think of as buildings such as schools or stadiums and whatnot. And you think about all those buildings, and even nowadays, Arthur, you probably have this at home. It's this connected home, like smart home, where you might have a Siri or an Alexa or Google Home, and how it creates like a smart home. That's one of the great things Johnson Controls does, is also offering connected solutions for buildings. And then last but not least, Johnson Controls, and I think this is critical in our current world, is this notion of sustainability, leaving our earth better than the place than where we came from, right? And there's a carbon footprint every time you take a plane ride or a train ride or get in your car. It's the same with buildings, right? We produce certain things out of the buildings that leave a footprint on our earth. And so my point is Johnson Controls has been super passionate about, looking at sustainability and creating buildings that are much more efficient and effective and leave less of a carbon footprint in our.
Okay. At Johnson Controls, what STEM subjects do you use?
What STEM subjects do we use? Well, we definitely use, real quick, engineering and mathematics. I mean, you think about buildings and their schematics and how it's all connected and engineering and all that good stuff. So we definitely play a role in the engineering and mathematical side of things, right?
Yeah.
As part of what we do to derive revenue. And then part of it is science. That goes back to that sustainability point, right? So we got to understand how science works. Like, who would have thought 30, 40 years ago we'd use windmills to create energy or solar panels to capture energy? In fact, Johnson Controls in their corporate headquarters in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, they have a fabulous building there. And one of the things I love when I go there, Arthi, is they have solar panels in the back part of the building that help produce the energy for the building, right? So just like rows of solar panels, right, capturing the sun and then leveraging it for our building. I think that's pretty neat. So that's the science part of the whole sustainability part.
And what about like the technology part? I noticed you didn't say anything about technology.
That's fair. I didn't, but we play a role and in the concept of it goes back to the connected buildings, like the technology leverage to manage a building, be it an HVAC or an alarm system. And so we leverage technology to help create, it goes back to those connected solutions for a building to understand what's going on within the four walls.
I also noticed that you said math too, and there's like so many types of like math subjects. So is there like a particular one that you use, or?
As far as in my role math that I use?
Yes.
I would love to tell you, like, I use some sort of, I mean, I use mathematics every day as far as, calculating an annual, like earlier I was on a meeting, we calculated the annual salary of a department of 700 people, right? And you calculate the salary, you're like, oh, you just add it all up. Well, no, we have fringe benefits. The company pays for benefits like medical and dental, pay employer taxes. So from a mathematics standpoint, specifically in like my role of a finance, I mean, it's every day I'm looking at, how to calculate things. And it could be annualizing our IT costs. It could be calculating what our annual IT costs would be based off of inflation or FX changes. FX means exchange rates, or maybe a cost of living increase, or maybe contractual increases. So mathematics is, Arthi, I don't know a day when I don't use math. But having said that, even in the business side, the people who make revenue, I mean, they use mathematics to calculate schematics, right? They got to know exactly, where something like an HVAC unit should be placed in the building, and it has to be a certain amount of feet away from a wall, and it needs to do this and this and this. And so they'll leverage all those mathematics and models to figure out exactly what needs to be done.
Okay. Since this is a interview about being a woman in STEM, I do want to ask the question about how women in STEM affects your personal life and career. And also if you had any challenges you faced as you are in this high position as vice president and all of that.
So women in STEM. Well, it's interesting, Arthi, and this is probably going to show how old I am. Like when I was growing up, STEM wasn't a thing. Like if I think, and I don't think I'm that old, to be quite frank, but when I grew up in the 90s, women tended to be more, like I think about all my girlfriends and what they did, and some of them became nurses, right? Some of them became cosmetologists. A couple of them, became stay-at-home moms, and all that's fantastic. But I don't remember ever thinking, wow, I could become an engineer. I guess my point is when I was growing up, there wasn't an essence of STEM. So you kind of inherently went into roles like of becoming a teacher. And there's nothing wrong. Like you have to have teachers, right? But those tend to be female dominated. I guess my point is that I loved how our world has gotten to say it doesn't matter your gender. An engineer or somebody that does mathematics does not need to be defined by your gender. A person that does engineering doesn't need to be defined by your gender. Technology, not by your gender. And so I love where our world has gotten with STEM. Having said that, my personal piece around STEM that I would say is growing up, Arthi, I loved mathematics. I just loved algebra and calculus and geometry. I would tell you, I always did better in those courses than I did like an English
Me too.
course. I guess my so what, where I'm trying to go with this is as I've gotten older, I love that our world has just become accepting and saying, hey, and it doesn't matter your gender, you can do whatever you want and whatever brings you happiness, whatever you're good at, and go do that.
Mm-hmm. I did want to ask, I've noticed that you're part of this woman to woman empowerment organization. And I think you're also a Girl Scout troop leader too. So do you think that affects yourself as a woman in STEM and like empowering women?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, going back to my comment of being a leader, I love seeing people succeed. And my comment earlier too, like I wouldn't be where I am in my career if I didn't have some good coaches and mentors. And Artie's, I would say at least half of my coaches and mentors were women, right? They were women who I just was very vulnerable with and said, you've been there, done that. How can I learn from you and grow?
Mm-hmm.
So coming back to Girl Scouts, I play a role with our service unit. I no longer am a troop leader, but my so what is that I love seeing folks grow. The Women to Women Empowerment organization I played a role in was taking college age girls and working on their communication, working on their presence. And so just getting to see them grow and teach them. And so I just felt anytime there's something where I can show someone and teach them, I tend to sign up for, if it's a volunteer opportunity, I tend to sign up for just because I just love seeing people succeed. I love seeing people grow.
That's really nice. And finally, what's your advice for high school students who want to pursue a STEM career?
That's my advice that you for pursuing a STEM career. Arthi, know what brings you joy. If that's technology, if that's engineering and putting things together, if it's mathematics, whatever brings you joy, go chase that. Growing old happens really quick. And I say that because here I am, I'm going to turn 45 in the next few weeks, Arthi. And I never thought I would be this old. I remember thinking when my mom was 45, man, that's really old. And here I am about to be 45. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it happened overnight. But coming back to my point, go find what brings you joy and chase that. So if it's something in the science field, right? Maybe it's something in healthcare. Maybe you're looking for a cure for COVID, or you're out there being an accountant like me because you love crunching numbers, or a finance practitioner. Or man, you love putting things together and you like schematics and you become an engineer and you do that. Or you're a technologist. You just love looking at predictive analytics or machine analytics to make someone's job easier. Just go chase that. Chase it and hustle. Hustle, hustle, hustle. And just be better the next day.
Thank you. And thank you so much for taking the time and letting me interview you. I really do appreciate it.
Of course, Arthi, I love to see you successful. So whatever I can do to make that happen, sister, I got your back.
Thank you.